August 12, 2019, dawned with a heavy stillness over the Gulf of Mexico as the Celestial Dream cruise ship drifted silently toward Biloxi, Mississippi. What should have been the second full day of a honeymoon voyage turned into the beginning of a grim mystery that would haunt two states, captivate a nation, and ultimately expose a deadly trail of deceit, financial ruin, and betrayal. Sometime between midnight and sunrise, newlywed Laura Chapman vanished, only to be found dead hours later, her body battered and waterlogged, washed ashore on a remote stretch of Dauphin Island. And her husband, Daniel Chapman, who had boarded the ship with her just one day earlier, had also disappeared without a trace, without his belongings, without even so much as an official record of leaving the ship. The Chapmans had married only 48 hours prior, in a modest yet tasteful ceremony in Roanoke, Virginia, attended by close family and friends who believed they were witnessing the union of a grounded, hard-working woman and a charismatic, upwardly mobile man. Laura, 28, was a respected ER nurse known for her quick thinking and even quicker wit. Her colleagues described her as someone who didn't fall for drama but had a deep need to fix broken things, sometimes people. Her younger sister Emily later recalled in interviews that Laura had a long-standing habit of rationalizing red flags, always believing that loyalty could somehow transform flawed men into stable partners. Daniel, 33, was a Knoxville native and former college baseball player who had cultivated a pristine image of success. Friends described him as charming, persuasive, and intensely self-assured, qualities that had won over not just Laura, but her entire extended family, despite some subtle inconsistencies in his personal timeline that only came to light after the tragedy. They had met in October 2016 at a hospital fundraiser in Richmond where Daniel claimed to be representing a wealth management firm. It was later discovered that he had recently been let go from that same firm under murky circumstances. Their courtship unfolded largely over long distances, punctuated by glossy Instagram posts, expensive weekend getaways, and gifts that, it would turn out, were purchased on borrowed money. After moving in together in early 2018, the engagement came swiftly that December, an intimate proposal during a trip to Asheville, and the wedding was planned for the following summer. The ceremony was understated and warm, with friends noting the bride's radiant smile, though some guests mentioned a tension they couldn't quite place. During the reception, Laura's sister Emily gave a heartfelt speech that later felt eerily prescient, noting that Laura always sees the best in people, even when the rest of us see warning signs. Daniel's best man, Chris Ralston, delivered what many at the time considered an awkward joke about Daniel always landing on his feet, even if he's got to jump off a cliff to do it. At 3:45 p.m. on August 11th, just one day after the ceremony, Laura and Daniel boarded the Celestial Dream in Mobile, Alabama. The ship, advertised as a boutique-style cruise experience tailored for honeymooners, featured just under 500 guests and a scaled-back luxury vibe that promised romance and seclusion. They were assigned stateroom 218, a mid-deck suite with a private balcony, and according to ship records and surveillance footage, appeared relaxed and affectionate, greeting crew members and toasting with cocktails as the ship set sail. At around 7:15 p.m., they were seen dining together at the Coral Bay dining room, ordering wine, sharing appetizers, interacting casually with a young couple at the next table. By 10 p.m., they had moved to the Skylark Lounge, where several passengers remembered the couple laughing, dancing, and visibly tipsy. Multiple witnesses described their behavior as affectionate but increasingly erratic. Laura appeared flushed and occasionally pulled away from Daniel, while he was seen gesturing intensely and ordering multiple drinks in quick succession. The final confirmed footage of the couple together showed them entering the elevator near their stateroom at 11:30 p.m. That is the last time Laura Chapman is ever seen alive. According to post-incident interviews, their room steward Marco Valles reported hearing a heavy thud shortly after midnight, a sound he initially attributed to moving luggage or late-night turbulence. But more concerning was a statement from Tracy McMillan, a passenger in the adjacent room, who told investigators she was awakened around 12:10 a.m. by what she believed was a woman's voice shouting, "You lied to me? I saw the messages," followed by what she described as muffled arguing. Around 12:27 a.m., Daniel was captured alone on a hallway camera near the snack bar, barefoot, dazed, and with what appeared to be a scratch or bruise on the left side of his neck. Crew members noted his disoriented behavior but chalked it up to drinking. Purchased a bottle of water, stayed in the area for a few minutes, then disappeared down a staff access hallway typically used by crew and maintenance personnel. By morning, the situation had begun to unravel. At 8 a.m., a breakfast tray scheduled for their room went uncollected. By 10 a.m., housekeeping found stateroom 218 unlocked, bed stripped, balcony door wide open, and no sign of either occupant. When Laura failed to respond to repeated calls and texts from her sister and mother, calls she typically answered promptly, even on vacation, Emily contacted cruise staff. By 12:45 p.m., ship security had initiated a welfare check, and by 4 p.m., both Laura and Daniel were officially reported missing. The ship docked as scheduled at 6:30 p.m. in Biloxi, but neither Laura nor Daniel disembarked. Initial searches of the vessel found no signs of a struggle, but a closer inspection revealed smudges on the balcony railing and what appeared to be dried blood on the frame of the sliding glass door. Samples that were sent for DNA testing and later confirmed to be Laura's. The FBI was contacted within hours. What began as a honeymoon became a crime scene, and what looked like a romantic escape transformed into a deadly illusion. At precisely 9:14 p.m. on August 12th, a couple walking along a narrow, windswept stretch of Dauphin Island's southern shore stumbled upon a body partially submerged in the tide, tangled in seaweed and wedged against the rocks. The woman's face was bruised, her skin bloated from hours in salt water, but a small silver necklace bearing the letter L allowed local authorities to make an initial identification even before dental records confirmed it the following morning. The body belonged to 28-year-old Laura Chapman. The autopsy conducted 2 days later by the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences revealed a disturbing pattern of injuries: blunt force trauma to the left side of her skull, multiple contusions along her forearms consistent with defensive wounds, and a fractured clavicle. Toxicology results were inconclusive due to decomposition but showed no lethal substances in her system. The pathologist concluded the cause of death to be homicidal violence consistent with blunt impact and submersion, estimating time of death between 12:30 and 1:30 a.m. on August 12th. Investigators turned immediately back to the Celestial Dream, where ship staff had already provided hours of security footage and room logs. Daniel Chapman's last verifiable appearance was at 12:55 a.m., caught on a lower deck security camera moving toward the ship's restricted service corridor, an area marked for crew only and not typically monitored as thoroughly. What happened after that is still the subject of conflicting theories. No further footage of Daniel appeared in any of the surveillance logs, nor did any keycard activity register his return to stateroom 218 or any other part of the ship. His clothes, his wedding band, his passport, his credit cards, and his cell phone were all left behind. Initially, cruise security considered the possibility of accidental drowning or even suicide, and by August 13th, a coordinated search operation was underway along the vessel's route. However, new testimony soon shifted the trajectory of the investigation. A deckhand named Stephen Harker came forward during the FBI's preliminary interviews, claiming that at approximately 3 a.m., he saw a tall man wearing a crew member's white jacket and cap emerging from a lower maintenance gangway, an area not in use at that hour. According to the ship's internal logs, when shown a photo of Daniel, Harker hesitated but eventually said, "Yeah, that looks like the guy." Further scrutiny revealed that none of the crew assigned to that shift matched the man's height or build. Adding to the suspicion was the fact that the Celestial Dream had made an unscheduled offshore pause at 2:37 a.m. near a private island owned by the cruise line, supposedly to allow for a routine maintenance check. There was no record of a tender boat being deployed, but a marine maintenance sublog, manually recorded, showed a single engine dinghy had been removed and returned, undocumented by the ship's central system. Investigators concluded that Daniel may have escaped the ship at that precise moment, disguised as crew, potentially using the dinghy to reach the island or rendezvous with another vessel. Meanwhile, a parallel inquiry into Daniel's financial and personal life uncovered an entirely different portrait of the man Laura had married. Just 3 days before their wedding, on August 7, 2019, Daniel's assets were frozen by the Securities and Exchange Commission as part of a growing investigation into an alleged securities fraud scheme involving Shell investment companies. Public records and whistleblower tips revealed that Daniel had quietly scammed at least 12 clients, totaling over $700,000, by promising high-yield returns through a now-defunct entity called Summit Arc Financial. Friends and former colleagues described him as persuasive to a fault, capable of making implausible deals sound inevitable. Some of the victims, interviewed later, said they had no idea they'd been defrauded until agents contacted them post-disappearance. Even more damning was the discovery of a life insurance policy taken out on Laura for $2.5 million. Naming Daniel as the sole beneficiary, activated on August 8th, just 2 days before the cruise and after the SEC action had begun. The policy raised immediate alarms among investigators, especially when it was revealed that Laura had not been informed of its existence. According to her sister, Laura handled all her own paperwork meticulously and would never have agreed to something of that magnitude without scrutiny. A burner phone found in Daniel's sock drawer at their Knoxville home added yet another layer of motive. Forensic analysis traced recent text conversations between Daniel and a woman named Chloe Patterson, 31, a yoga instructor from Pensacola. Chloe, visibly shaken during her interview with federal agents, admitted to an affair but claimed Daniel told her he was in the process of ending his engagement. Their last known message exchange, time-stamped the night of the wedding, included phrases like, "I'm almost free," and "we'll be gone before they even notice." Authorities believe Chloe may have been unwittingly entangled in the escape plan. As the FBI widened the scope of their manhunt, potential sightings began to surface across Central America. Belize City, where a bartender claimed a man matching Daniel's photo had paid cash for a rum tab. A hostel in Tulum, where an American guest had signed in under the name R. Lawson, and Cartagena, Colombia, where a dive instructor swore she taught a quiet, southern-accented man with haunted eyes. None of the leads have been verified. On August 18, 2019, a federal arrest warrant was issued for Daniel Chapman on charges of interstate flight to avoid prosecution and suspicion of murder. By early September, Interpol issued a red notice, classifying him as an international fugitive. Though some believe Daniel had died alongside his wife, by accident or design, the evidence told a darker story. The body had been found. The man had vanished. The growing consensus among investigators was chilling in its simplicity. Daniel Chapman, cornered by financial collapse, exposed in his lies and driven by greed, murdered his wife of 48 hours, faked his own death, and slipped into the world with no intention of ever being seen again. As weeks turned into months and the public fascination with the Chapman case intensified, the media narrative began to fracture into two competing storylines. One, a tragic tale of a devoted nurse slain by the man she believed to be her partner in life. The other, a twisted modern ghost story about a man who walked off the edge of the world and left behind a trail of ruin, suspicion, and unanswered questions. By October 2019, the FBI's Chapman Task Force had logged over 500 tips, with dozens of alleged sightings stretching from Panama to Prague, none of them verified. Meanwhile, Laura's family, anchored by her sister Emily, pushed for legislative reforms around cruise ship safety, highlighting the glaring loopholes in maritime surveillance and the lack of real-time accountability when passengers disappear in international waters. They also hired private investigator Henry Grayson, a retired U.S. Marshal with a reputation for hunting fugitives, who began reassembling Daniel's fractured past with cold precision. What emerged from Grayson's deep dive was a portrait of long-term deception more layered than even the FBI had realized. Daniel had once been married before, briefly, to a woman named Allison Riley in 2012, a marriage annulled after just 6 months. According to court filings obtained by Grayson, the annulment cited irreconcilable fraud, and though Allison refused interviews, sealed documents suggested Daniel had used her identity to secure a personal loan under false pretenses. By 2015, he'd reinvented himself entirely, legally changing his middle name, relocating to Virginia, and rebuilding his financial facade under a different business alias. The pattern was clear: seduction, illusion, and extraction. He pursued women who were competent, emotionally intelligent, and financially stable, only to destabilize them from within, leaving them questioning their own instincts while he drained their resources. And yet, what haunted those closest to Laura wasn't just how Daniel had fooled her. It was the belief that, toward the end, she'd begun to see the cracks. A friend from nursing school, Rachel Kim, came forward in early November with a chilling voicemail Laura had left just days before the wedding, saying, "I don't know why, but I feel like he's hiding something. Something huge. But maybe I'm just being paranoid again." Investigators now believe Laura may have discovered fragments of Daniel's true life, possibly the burner phone or inconsistencies in his financial documents, and confronted him the night she died. The theory, though impossible to confirm without his testimony, aligns with the timeline and physical evidence, including the defensive wounds and the witness who reported hearing her yell, "I saw the messages." By January 2020, the case had grown cold again. No new sightings, no bank activity, no confirmed digital fingerprints. Daniel Chapman had disappeared as though he had never existed, leaving behind not just an unsolved murder, but a chilling gap in the fabric of reality. A man who had once shaken hands, taken vows, signed leases, kissed foreheads, and yet now lived only in pixelated surveillance footage and the empty echoes of court records. In March 2021, the Chapman family held a memorial in Roanoke to mark what would have been Laura's 30th birthday, an event both somber and unresolved, framed not by closure but by enduring disbelief. The FBI quietly scaled back active pursuit, citing dwindling leads and the limitations of international cooperation. Grayson, still working the case independently, believes Daniel is alive, possibly living under an assumed identity in South America, perhaps protected by someone unaware or complicit. And so the story lingers in a strange purgatory, suspended between grief and rage, truth and legend. The man who vanished into the darkness left behind a life stolen, a woman discarded, and a puzzle with just enough pieces missing to drive everyone who knew them toward madness. Groom vanishes, bride washes ashore, and somewhere, out in the vast sprawl of possibility, a murderer breathes freely under a borrowed name, sipping coffee, watching strangers pass, and praying that the world has finally stopped looking.